first of all, thank you for inviting me here to the EMA conference. Thank you to the EMA delegates, EMA members, and Sabas in particular. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you also for giving me the opportunity this year to be on the jury and to see all those wonderful submissions and to be part of the experiential and event management piece, because this is something, again, very close to my heart. You know, when I was reflecting on today's topic, it was a very interesting topic, because what bewildered me, and I could see with Rob before me, and you know, it's very difficult to follow Rob with all the work he has done for the conference and everything which he was doing here. I was thinking to myself that in this conference of the young, with theme of the young, what is an old man like me doing and what am I going to talk about, particularly for the future? But then someone reminded me that, mind you, you are a minority as a demography, particularly, as you know, so therefore as an old man in this country. And minorities in our country do have a right to say something. So definitely I do have that right, and I'll try and talk to you about what my perspective on this entire piece is. Now, coming to events, if you look at events, I think, you know, while we call this the sunrise industry, you know, so therefore it's arguably, you know, the industry which is growing fastest within our sunrise industry of media and entertainment, and there is enough and more scope. I again reflected, and I thought that while we call it the sunrise industry, it perhaps dates back most of the industry within media and entertainment which we know of. So if you look at the excavations and some of the work which archaeologists have done on any old excavation, but particularly the Indus Valley one, you will find a lot of evidence that there used to be congregations, and arguably some of these congregations were for entertainment. And if one had any doubt, if you look at Arthashastra, and if you read there is clear evidence that there was, in ancient times as well, congregation for dance and music. So events as an industry perhaps dates back as perhaps back to the beginning of humankind, and then therefore it's always been around. So the good news is that because this is the basic thing which all of us as human beings want, it has been around, it will be around, and it is now, as we started calling it, the sunrise industry, and perhaps in the experiential piece, and then something which Rob was talking about, the joy of being in the midst of an experiential entertainment piece, whether it is whether it's music, whether it's the art forms, whether it's comedy, I think cannot be paralleled by any other forms of entertainment. So events, without doubt, has a great future, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Coming then to the next question, and you know, which is a question I always have to ask as a business person, what is the size and where are we going to? So if you look at the size of the current and what is happening vis-a-vis growth of this industry, so arguably the industry is growing quite well. The size of this industry in this country is just under $1 billion, some 5,800 crores to be precise. But I think if this is the number, then if we have to grow it to, let's say, 5 times or 10 times, what do we need to do? Because this number, at one level, is humbling, because our industry in India is, and when I say this, I'm excluding mice. I'm also excluding rights. So I think, you know, all the price of rights and all, because that I'm taking out. I'm talking about 5,800 crores. Sabas was quoted some time back on the size of the New York entertainment event and entertainment piece being close to about $10 billion, $10 to $12 billion. So this is New York City, ladies and gentlemen, which has a size of about $10 to $12 billion. Now, I don't know whether this 5,800 is strictly comparable to it, because perhaps this $10, $12 billion also included some amount of ecosystem numbers, and therefore was not strictly what you define only as events. Having said that, the disparity is pretty high still. And my submission is, at a 20-odd% growth in 10 years, we'd perhaps reach $5 billion. But if we could dial this up to about 28, 30% growth, then we would reach a $10 billion in a 10-year horizon. And it's important, because I think this is going to be critical. This is going to remain an industry which will grow fast, and I'm quite convinced. But if we have to make some of these things happen, I then wanted to touch upon the keynote topic which was given to me, and I think which is the thing I want to talk about. The 4 key areas where we could perhaps make an intervention, if at all, we aspire to reach or be at least in this zone, and it's a very wide range, but still it's a good range to go for, which is 5 times to 10 times, $5 to $10 billion. Someone doesn't seem to agree with me, and that's why there is some protest there, but having said that, we should still aspire for it. There is no doubt about it. So I think what I then thought of is to talk to you about 4 key buckets in my assessment, which will, in my particular opinion, dial up events to the very next level. And perhaps allow us to sort of aspire to be in this region. And let me first start with technology, because that's the buzzword now, and therefore, within that, let me first start with VR. So if you look at, if VR could go mainstream, and my sense is VR is at that tipping point, it will go mainstream. As VR goes mainstream, this is the best news in my assessment for events as an industry. So ladies and gentlemen, this would dial up our industry to a very different level. And the reason I say that, so first of all, let me talk a little bit about VR. Now, as you know, VR headsets are becoming more and more affordable. Arguably, some of the trial pieces are as inexpensive as 200 rupees. They are trial pieces. They're not the best of the pieces, but it's all becoming more and more affordable. And the good news with technology and technology which can be adopted is that it becomes more and more affordable. So that piece will happen. The VR headsets, in my opinion, is largely taken care of. Then you look at smartphones. Now, thanks to India and perhaps China, and with the billions there, the smartphones are again becoming very affordable. They have more and more features. So, sub-$100 smartphones are coming in. And so all that, as you know, and again, so that piece is taken care of. Now, as far as a country like India is concerned, the third key piece for VR to go mainstream was in the area of data, both the data speed and data prices. And I think, it's data speed and data prices, which basically is the thing which will be, again, driven by the latest revolution in 4G, which you're talking about, which has been spearheaded by Jio. But I think in the country now, with 4G coming out, I think that will take care of both data speeds and data prices. So with all of this in place, I think what is definitely going to happen is VR will go mainstream. VR going mainstream means that you do an event in one place. You could have thousands, 10,000s, maybe 100,000 people in the experiencing it absolutely live. But you would be able to dial it up by a factor of 10, sometimes even 100 through VR, so that there are others who are experiencing it in the same form. And therefore, you dial up experiential entertainment to a very different level. And that is just round the corner. It will happen. I'm a big fan of VR. I'm also a fan of what we call AR, or augmented reality. Perhaps the scope of augmented reality is slightly less limited than of VR, but augmented reality, again, is an important piece when it comes to a lot of demonstrations, some of our live pieces. I personally feel in some of the reality areas in the work which we do in television, there is room for augmented reality. So VR, AR, when I generally talked about VR, is the first theme I wanted to talk about, and that's the big one. The second piece which everybody talks about is the piece which you see here, which is analytics drives ROI, or data drives ROI. And I think this again is great news for this industry, because one of the key issues which has always been there with the events within media and entertainment is the measurability of it. So people say, can you measure it? Especially the advertisers, and you know the advertising pie in India is growing. It's close to about 55 to 60,000 crores across all mediums I'm talking about here in media and entertainment. But the event's ability to get a substantial part of this advertising pie is limited. And I think that's been limited because of the measurability. So therefore, there's always been a doubt, is there a measurable, how would you measure this? And about also the scale of the piece. I think what is going to happen as we go forward, and thanks to analytics, in my opinion, and I think that's the second big theme, it's a theme applicable to all media, but particularly in events again. I think, as we go forward, you'll be able to say who all are attending this piece. So who all are here? Where do they come from? What are their backgrounds? What are the things they can do? And so on and so forth. So I think, what do they like? Who are their friends? Who do they socialize with? And I can see Rishi here, I think with Twitter. So I think with a combination of so in future with events and with technologies like RFID, with the technologies like IoTs, with social platforms which we have available with us, and with the ability to mine this data together and put it together, I think the proposition which we could have for advertisers as we go forward could be hugely compelling. And the premiums you could command for the kind of stuff which we will do would be phenomenal. So the second piece I wanted to leave you with is this entire piece around analytics and data that drives technology. The third piece I wanted to talk about is, I think, slightly futuristic, but having said that, this is also around the corner. Some of you may have picked it up. This is actually, a very recent topic, and a lot of discussion is happening around the world on this. This is the entire concept of blockchain technology. Blockchain technology has been talked a lot in the financial world, not necessarily in the media world, but my own assessment is that basically blockchain technology will give a great opportunity for live events once again. Because I think blockchain technology, what it will do is it will enable artists much more, and I think what it can do is it can do smart programming. It could do intelligent songs, as some of you may have heard of. So what that means is, as the person is performing, in future, you are able to do real-time transmission, of which we do today as well, but real-time transmission of some of this piece along with encryption. And I think the piece is if we can get the encryption going there real-time, and if you have intelligent songs or intelligent performances or intelligent AIB performance or whatever, and if you could have all your, the agreements and everything which we talk about it embedded. And believe you me, this world is not very far. It's about 5 years away in my assessment, when along with that, let's say the so-called data file, or let's say the video file, or the music file, or audio-visual file, you will have the data files. So everything travels together. So what that does is, it empowers the artist to a very large extent. And it takes away the role of intermediaries. So if you are an intermediary, if you are an aggregator, if you are people who are assembling these and projecting them, you have a problem. But if you are that artist, and the good thing about live business is, live business will always excite and bring artists together. As an artist, your ability to get discovered and to reach out to your consumer directly will get dialed up considerably. So this technology, which is with the blockchain technology, has far-reaching and perhaps arguably big this thing coming up for us. The fourth piece is conventional. The fourth theme which I wanted to leave you with is that physical infra in a country like India can bring in global audiences. India arguably does some of the biggest events. So if you treat election as an event, it is the biggest saga which is done anywhere in the world. If you treat, of course, Kumbh Mela is definitely an event. If you look at Kumbh Mela as an event, we do perhaps the largest aggregation of humankind anywhere in the planet at one time. So I think it's our ability to bring the infrastructure together, to get the physical infrastructure in place. And if I could borrow from the terminology which the government is using nowadays on ease of doing business. So if infrastructure along with ease of doing business could come together, which is a single window clearances, which we've been talking about again and again, but more importantly, the building of physical infrastructure. With physical infrastructure, there are so many events in India already happening which have a very large global curiosity and global audience available. And their ability to come here would be determined by physical infrastructure. That will take some time, but the good news is that the government is on that way. If you look at some of the pieces happening on roads, ports, airports, I think in terms of the stadia and infrastructure is a piece which also needs to get dialed up. Again, if you look at this, again, is about a 10-year horizon. So I started with a couple of year horizon to a 3 to 5 year horizon to a 5 to 10 year horizon, and maybe a 10-year plus horizon. If you look at some of these 4 key themes, our ability to dial up, the entire events piece will be very, very high. I wanted to now come back and talk to you about the numbers I had spoken about, which is, the piece on $10 billion. What I'm very convinced about, and it's a theme which I, talk about all the time in every forum when I can speak of for media and entertainment. Media and entertainment as an industry per se, on its own, and events, it's true for events as well. If you stack these numbers, they may look small. But the multiplier ability of media and entertainment as an industry, and events particularly within that, and its ability to dial up tourism, and that's why I showed you that slide on Incredible India, its ability to dial up tourism is actually extremely high. So there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt in my mind that along with tourism, we could definitely get these billions and maybe more. So I think the ability of events to therefore dial up tourism, and if we get these 4 key pieces which I spoke about in place, we would be able to get this done. I remembered from what Rob was just saying, and he kept saying, stay fearless. And I want to sign off by telling you that at Viacom18, one of the values we try to practice is what we call stay curious, stay fearless. And what I can guarantee everyone here, Sabas and the EMA delegates and the people, that we are always willing to jump. We will be attempting all these things I talked to you about. We are big fans of VR, AR, the pieces we are working on. We will be, always willing to work with you, to try, to attempt, and to, as I call the word jump, to try new things, because that's the only way we will learn. We are all learning. The good thing about continuing to learn is that you may have aged from a point of view of demography, but as you always remain young when it comes to your mind. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for time, and thank you for your patience.